Nandana Brajanaranjana Jasodhanandana Brajanaranjana Jamanatira Vanapchadi Jamanatira Vanapchadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Jana Malabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Malabha Girivardhari Jasodhanandana Brajanaranjana Jasodhanandana Brajanaranjana Jamanatira Vanachadi Yamanatira Vanapchadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Kunjabi Hari Jayo Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajagacharya Astatarasatasi Simadis Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavarind Ki Jantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gora Premanandi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Continuing, Canto 10, Chapter 14, Text 6, Brahma's prayers to Krishna in Vrindavan. This verse, Text 6, we covered part of it yesterday evening, and now this morning continuing. Very interesting, it's a little intricate. So you have to pay close attention to the details because otherwise you'll be lost in the forest. This is describing how the impersonal Brahman can be realized. The personal feature for non-devotees cannot be realized. Bhakti alone is access to Krishna. However, there is a way, it's described in this verse, for those who aren't Shuddha Bhaktas to realize his impersonal feature. In case you wanted to know how to do that, here's how to do that. From the authority of Lord Brahma. Non-devotees, however, cannot realize you in your full personal feature. Nevertheless, it may be possible for them to realize your expansion as the impersonal supreme by cultivating direct perception of the self within the heart. Sounds like Paramatma attention, focus, whether meditation process, philosophical process, cultivating direct perception of the self within the heart. But they can do this only by purifying their mind and senses of all conceptions of material distinctions. Good luck. And all attachment to material sense objects. More feasible than the subtle, all conceptions of material distinctions. Only in this way will your impersonal feature manifest itself to them. And here's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. Although only pure prema bhakti gives direct realization of the sweet form of Krishna, through jnana mixed with bhakti, doesn't speak of dhyana, it's jnana mixed with bhakti, one can attain realization of the impersonal Brahman. This, however, is attained only after giving up jnana. How do you have jnana mixed with bhakti if you've given up jnana? Doesn't explain, he just makes a statement. We'll just expand on that a little bit. Jnana means empiric speculative tendencies, and that has to be given up completely. Jnane prayasa udapasya. So then, if you've given up jnana, how can you have jnana mixed with bhakti? Well, it's a little slippery slope here, but perhaps it's trying to understand by study of the Vedas, but that effort mixed with bhakti. What's rejected is just the solo, no bhakti, just empiric study. Okay, so now, next paragraph. Quote, "Oh, one who reveals his sweet form, Bhuman, Krishna, though this form can be attained only by prema bhakti, your great form, Mahima, without material qualities, agunasya, can be understood. Vibudhum arhati," unquote. So your great form, this word becomes important. He's going to focus on it. Mahima, your great form, Mahima, without material qualities, agunasya, can be understood. Unquote. Mahima, in this case, means impersonal Brahman. Since the Lord himself says, now here's two quotes. One quote is from Bhagavatam 8:24-38. 8:24-38. This is Matsya Avatar speaking to Satyavrata, the king Satyavrata. You know the whole Matsya story, so Matsya appeared, and Matsya, he realized the Matsya is the Lord, and Matsya is speaking to him. He offers prayers to the Lord. Matsya speaks to him. And this Mahima word appears in what the Lord says. Madhyam Mahimanam cha parabrahmeti shabditam. So mahimanam is the same word. Madhyam, in Prabhupada's word-for-word translation, Madhyam means everything pertaining to. Everything pertaining to. Madhyam, Mahimanam, Cha Para Brahmeti Shabditam. Prabhupada's translation in the BBT publication, everything about my glories. So my glories is this Mahima. Everything about my glories, comma, which are known as Parabrahma. There's one other place found in Prabhupada's writings where it's from a different source. It doesn't say where, but it's since everything is a manifestation of my energy, I am known as Parabrahman. So that's one statement. My glories, which are known as Parabrahman. So the glories that are Parabrahman, but now the qualifier in this verse is agunasya. So it can be that the Supreme Lord has form without qualities, without material qualities. But then there's another reference spoken by Dhruva, 4.9.10, Dhruva speaking to Lord Vishnu, where he says, Sa Brahmani Sva Mahimani Api Nataha. There's the word Mahimani again, Mahima. Prabhupada's translation, your glories are so unlimited, your glories are so unlimited that they are far beyond the stage of Brahmananda, wherein one thinks himself merged with the impersonal Brahman as one with the Supreme. So he doesn't elaborate, so I'll try to elaborate, make an attempt. Why does this word Mahiman mean the impersonal Brahman instead of something else? Because it could mean his opulences, or it could have different meanings. All the acharyas translate it as the impersonal feature. So there's all consistency. Why? He's taking a stab at explaining why. Why does it mean the impersonal Brahman? Well, on the one hand, but on the other hand. So the Dhruva passage says the Mahima of the personality of Godhead is beyond Brahman realization. Okay, then one could say, well, then it's Brahman realization. That's what he's talking about. Excuse me. The Supreme Person could be taken, he's the Mahima of the Supreme Person, and these non-devotees can realize the Supreme Person through non-devotional methods. No, that's already been stated. That's the first part of the verse. So if it's not the personal feature, then what is it? It's the Mahima means the impersonal feature. That's one of the glories. That's in the Parabrahman range. It's nothing material. It's in the Parabrahman range, but it's not his form. So it's the impersonal feature by, logic, by inverse reasoning. And if you didn't catch it, that's okay. He's speaking about, Brahma is speaking about the realization of the impersonal feature for non-devotees. Vishwanath continues, paragraph. What is the cause? The cause is a pure heart and performing one's prescribed actions or duties. Question. How can the heart or the mind, transformations of the subtle body, realize the formless Parabrahman? The heart is described as avikirya, without change. The spiritual or changeless heart, parentheses, the soul, perceives the changeless Brahman. So what just happened? Just like the word Atma can mean different things, correct? It can mean the soul, it can mean the mind, it can mean the body, depending upon context. So this word heart can mean different things depending upon context. Here, he's taking that, Vishwanath is taking that the heart here in this case means the soul, the spiritual or changeless heart, because something that's transcendental has to be exercised to realize the transcendental, because something mundane can't realize something transcendental. Even the heart, that's not transcendental. So it's not the covering of the consciousness of the soul, it's the consciousness of the soul. Chitta. One of the meanings of chitta is also that. So here we go. The spiritual or changeless heart, parentheses, soul, perceives the changeless Brahman. Question. But how can Brahman, without object of perception, be perceived by something else? Thus, the heart is described as arupataha, without form, meaning without material form. The heart, or mechanism of perception, that's the soul, that's consciousness of the soul, is the same as Brahman and therefore perceives it. Can Brahman be perceived by other means? It is only perceivable by itself. It is not perceived like ordinary objects with form, through sound and touch. Realization summary. Realization of the impersonal feature. We discussed this yesterday. You mentioned it in your Bhagavad-Gita class. Klesho dikkatarastesham avyakta asakta chetasam 12.5 Bhagavad-Gita. It's a chapter, Devotional Service is the title of the chapter. Arjuna is asking which is better, worship of your personal or your impersonal feature. There is an impersonal feature, and he speaks about the impersonal feature. Oh, klesha, very difficult. This is very difficult. Even to describe it is difficult, and to understand the description is difficult, and the process is difficult. Read the purport, and it elaborates further what the process is and how difficult it is. But just going back to this verse, like freeing the mind from all conceptions based upon matter. What are you left with? How do you think that thought? Well, you have to do that before you can realize the impersonal Brahman, and then the impersonal Brahman is revealed to you within the heart, and the instrument for its revelation is Brahman, the soul. It's not the material mind, because we just said this earlier. The material mind can't go there. It's beyond the material mind to go there. You can't go there with the material mind or material intelligence. You have to use the mind, you have to use the intelligence, the mind fixed upon the Supreme Self, the intelligent discerning what's the Supreme Self and what's not, Sankhya, guiding meditation. And if you're not exhausted by the end of all that, perhaps in all material, it's like a vacuum. The mind becomes just this space. Then absolute impersonal Brahman might be revealed to you. Then again, it might not. But if it is revealed, that's how it's revealed. So then this last paragraph is, well, wait a minute. How can something material realize something that's spiritual? How something that's limited realize something that's unlimited? How can something that undergoes transformation realize that which doesn't undergo transformation? The Mayavadis do it by negation. Well, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this. And so what is it? Well, it's not this. It's a philosophical attempt to realize what this verse is describing. No material conceptions in the mind. So what is it? Not this. It has to be realized at the platform of the soul. The method that's being described in the verse is meditating on the Supreme Soul within. Let's hear what Jiva Goswami has to say. Devotees completely give up attempts at Gyan. However, 2 verses explain some results for the Gyanis. Impersonal, at best, with much difficulty. Your greatness without qualities, what's that? Well, it can be the Brahman, impersonal Brahman. It can be Krishna's form. Your greatness without qualities is possible to be understood by the intelligence. Vibodhum. This includes revelation to the senses also. Perception of your greatness is possible. Mahima stands for Mahimanam, because we read this Mahimanam, so he's going to say it again. The Lord and the Jiva are considered one, since the Jiva is a conscious angsa of the Lord. Right? The part is of the same quality as the whole. In the word for word of this verse, text 6, Ananya bodhyatma tanya. Ananya means no other. Bodhyatma taya. Prabhupada's word for word in this verse, self-manifested, without the help of any other illuminating agent. So the Jiva is qualitatively one with the Lord, as being the angsa of the Lord. Paragraph. Sridhar Swami explains that the Lord is called Arupataha. Arupataha, in the word for word, it's without attachment to material forms. That's one of the 2 qualifications. No attachment to material conceptions, no attachment to material forms. Subtle and gross, or material sense objects. Arupitaha. It's becoming attached to the impersonal. Right? 12.5 Bhagavad-Gita. Klesho dikataras tesham avyakta asakta. Attachment to that which has no material form or quality. The impersonal. Avyakta asakta. So Sridhar Swami explains that the Lord is called Arupataha, without attachment to material forms. That's him. It's either from our perception of him or, just his own existence. He's not attached to material forms because he is not an object of perception. He's not so what's that? The adhoksaja is the common word beyond human perception. The senses can't go there, the mind can't go there. He's adhoksaja. He's beyond human perception. He's not an object of human perception. So he, from the point of the observer, is without attachment to material forms. If those who realize this have to have no attachment to material forms. He, conversely, has no attachment to material forms. And that's his personal and impersonal feature, both. The perception of the Lord by Chitta, there's this word, the heart. Chitta can mean different things. The perception of the Lord by Chitta is simply a perception of an object with a semblance of Chit. Gosh, what's being said here? It's realization of the impersonal is really difficult. Understanding it is really difficult. Explaining it is really difficult. But that's what our acharyas are doing here. The perception of the Lord by Chitta is simply a perception of an object with a semblance of Chit. Now, is the object with a semblance of Chit, or is the perceiver having only a semblance of Chit? Or is the act of perception with only a semblance of Chit? Doesn't specify. And Chit means awareness or consciousness, eternity, knowledge, and bliss. A semblance of Chit. It's not the fullness. The fullness comes with prema bhakti, and a semblance of Chit is this what these jnanis may get with much difficulty. Semblance of Chit. Very modest modicum of awareness or knowledge that comes about by negation, without the positive, because the positive comes from the heart when there's bhakti, and the reciprocation from the Lord from those who have bhakti as he reveals himself. So they don't get that because they don't have fullness of Chit. So the perception of the Lord by Chitta, we use Vishwanath's word, the heart, the spiritual heart, the soul. The perception of the Lord by Chitta is simply a perception of an object with a semblance of Chit. I'm glad this is a morning class. I specifically didn't try to do this yesterday evening. Because this audience is you can handle the complexities a little bit better. One more paragraph, and then I'll try to summarize. So again, this is Jiva Goswami. Next, tomorrow, or this evening, is Sanatana Goswami. Or, though you can be perceived through bhakti, one cannot completely realize you, since you are an ocean of unlimited auspicious qualities. That's this mahima. But some person can realize the greatness of perhaps one of your qualities, gunasya. The point he's making here is this Brahman feature, in this case, is being considered as a quality. That's not the normal way if we think of qualities, and that Brahman is one of the qualities, Brahman is one of the aspects of the absolute truth. But the language can be read to mean that the Brahman feature of the Lord is one of his qualities. But some person can realize the greatness of perhaps one of your qualities, gunasya. He can realize the great, mahi, treasure, ma, of one among your qualities, like mercy, with realization according to his cultivation, svanubhavat, but not completely. That cultivation is devoid of other desires, avikriyat. What is that realization? It is a form realized as one Atma or Brahman, which cannot be defined materially. arupataha. It cannot be defined except according to one's realization, and not beyond that. The Brahman is here considered to be a quality of the Lord. So if it wasn't complicated enough, it just got more complicated. This last paragraph is taking a possible interpretation that's, it's a Vaishnava way of looking at this. The Brahman can, at least can be read to be as one of the qualities of the Lord that doesn't have material characteristics. It can't be defined materially. It has no material form, all those things. And by the mercy of Krishna, he may reveal that characteristic of him or quality of him that is revealed to one who has no other desire. That's this avyakta asakti, attachment to the impersonal. Some persons are very attached to the impersonal, pretty dry, but they're attached to we discussed. This impersonal tendency is, what does it say in Bhagavad-Gita? It's born of frustration. Who knows the verse?
Vita raga bhaya krodha.
Yeah, Vita raga bhaya krodha. Krodha. Anger. So when you're frustrated, take it away. Someone was describing themselves as having a coping mechanism called impersonalism in their relationships with people. They just numb themselves, so because they don't want the pain of, something. Having somebody be less than a perfect being and they're bumping into them or interacting with them. So they have a tendency just to shut things out. They call it recently coping mechanism. So those tendencies are there. Nirvishesha shunyavadi paschatya desatarine, they're with us. But to go all the way with it, then the realization of the impersonal feature becomes possible. And that's just with using this language here, just a semblance of awareness or semblance of knowledge rather than the full knowledge. No attachment to material forms, no attachment to material conceptions of things. I mean, I don't know how do you wrap your mind around that one? I mean, here, think of what we do. Right, what we're doing right now. I'm sitting in a chair, there's a little desk in front of me, there's a camera over there, this and that. No attachment to material conceptions of things. Then you can sit on the ceiling, because chairs have a material conception, what chairs are for. How do you do it? How do you even think of what it is? But it's possible. It's doable. So the emphasis, going back, because we'll touch on this again this evening, but the emphasis, 1, 2, 3. This is verse number 6. Verse number 3 is Jnane Prayasa Udapasya. Those who are practicing bhakti in such a way that they can realize the personal feature, they throw away completely the speculative tendencies. Not easy to do either, but that's what text 3 says. And namanta eva, instead they hear and they want to understand with folded palms. Namanta eva. to the Supreme Lord and the topics of the Supreme Lord. And they dedicate themselves, body, words, and mind, to those topics. They live with those topics at the center of their life. That's their life and soul, those topics. They can realize the Supreme Lord, and not only realize the Supreme Lord, but he willfully turns himself over to them to be controlled by them, who can otherwise not be controlled. The Damodar Leela. Then the next is the reverse. Supposing there are persons that neglect or throw far distant place Udapasya Bhakti, and they take instead to the Gyan process, they can't realize the self, and they just get trouble, misery. Then this verse is, well, they can get something with much trouble. And that's 12.5 Bhagavad-Gita. They can get Brahman realization. And here's how they can get Brahman realization. Not pleasant, hardly possible, very, very rare, very painful, but possible. But it's just a tiny little aspect of the greatness of the Supreme Great, and it's not touching his personal feature. So the emphasis is on Gyan. We touched on this yesterday, but the emphasis is on Gyan, but Gyan, when it's matured, turns into Dhyan. Yes? Once you can understand what's what, then you meditate on, the reality distinct from illusion. Gyan matured turns into Dhyan in a concentrated form. So the meditation upon the self with a capital S within, Supersoul. Now, some of those persons, their aspiration, meditation on Supersoul, is to merge in Brahman. So it gives us a clue. What are the results of, because sometimes this question is asked, what's the result of the Jnani, the meditator that actually realizes Supersoul? And a lot depends upon their disposition, once again. The intention behind their doing what they're doing. And some may want to, I am that Supersoul. That's me. Haribo. Prabhu. That's me. And, there can be different destinations, in short. And, even this, such jnani, if they come to the stage of then associating with devotees and chanting the glories of the devotees, chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord, then they can get a very elevated destination. So the focus is going once again to these topics of the Supreme Lord, the Bhagavad Dharma process, dedication to the topics of the personality of Godhead, and not that becomes, utilized by us like limousine to take us to where we want to go today. It's with the mood of devotion, with namanta eva to those topics, and dedication of body, words, and mind to those topics in the course of carrying out the duties of life, etc. The supreme destination then becomes possible. And there's other options. This is, a very complicated one and painful one and rarely achieved one, but possible. Same as what we find in chapter 12 Bhagavad-Gita. This is just an expanded version of chapter 12 Bhagavad-Gita, the first few verses. Brahma's prayers, this little section we're going over. Okay, it's 8 minutes after the hour. Let's see if there's some discussion. Do we want the light on? Won't come on. It's on strike. Too bright. Okay.
I'm having a couple of thoughts, Guru Maharaj. So one question I'm having is, so when one is hit with frustration, that impersonalism looks to be solace because
Looks.
to be the point to go to shelter or solace.
Yeah.
Because I don't have enough bhakti, and then I just need to, that looks to be the shelter. The impersonal is at that point of time.
Negation. I got it.
So what to do?
You're a conditioned soul. So the reflex go to the place of shelter position doesn't bring solace. It may give pain reduction or seem to give pain reduction, but it doesn't give solace. And ultimately, in that, retreating to impersonalism, you feel alone, you feel not loved, you feel misunderstood, and you have all those, negative feelings, and you can spiral into, out of control. That happens. So it's Maya. Embracing or taking shelter of that which is not. There's no shelter there. There's no shelter there. It looks inviting, like numbing. And when the Novocaine wears off, it hurts. Or the anesthesia wears off, it hurts. So there must be a better option. There is a better option. That's the good news. What's the better option? Purification.
And that looks to be more painful at that point of
Well,
time.
that's because of conditioning. It may look like more painful, but it's not. Not. Next.
So this process of impersonalism, or like the persons who are taking to this process of impersonalism, looks to be like very stubborn, like they want to do it themselves, kind of a thing.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to
Yes.
clarify that understanding.
I don't. I'm independent. Don't tread on me. That's an American phrase, by the way. Don't tread on me. It shows, as far as I can visualize, there's this serpent that's like prana. Don't tread on me. I'm an individual. I'm a self-made man. Look out, here I come. Don't tread on me. Macho. False ego all the way. I don't need anybody. Get away from me, unless you're going to help me. And if you stop helping me, get away from me. So it's fear, and it's illusion, another illusion. But it's just part of the effort to become one. It's an illusion, last snare of illusion. And it can be less severe than those who are this way. Okay, it can be less severe than that extreme. You can be next to death, or you can just have a high fever. So we're probably a little bit better off just having a high fever than next to death.
and finalizing my confirmation that then the sages looks to be coming into that category, like demonstration of strongest stubbornness, the Munis, sages,
The which stages?
the generally the sages, they try to do things on their own.
The sages, yes.
Sages, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the final one. Then Sukadeva Goswami went through all these things and come to bhakti.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, he didn't go. He just took birth and he was already there. He didn't have to undergo anything. He was already there.
I mean to say, like, he was said to be Brahmavadi. That means in the previous life, he...
Well, what do we know about his previous life? There's different versions of his previous life.
That's somewhat like a related question to this impersonal realization, Guru Maharaj, about the process itself seems to be so tedious and frustrating.
So what and what?
Tedious, like very,
Tedious?
yeah, like strenuous and frustrating.
The impersonal process.
Yeah. And it's also like from Bhagavad-Gita, we are learning that it's born out of frustration.
Yes.
I mean, people who are frustrated go for this.
Yes.
And the process also is frustrating.
Yeah, numbing.
Sense.
Yes.
Numbing. So,
Frustration.
and then, so I was just thinking about Queen Kunti, who says that one can approach or take shelter of Krishna when they are materially exhausted. So I was trying to see what is the quality of frustration or exhaustion between
Well, if
the two.
material exhaustion doesn't, it can mean frustration and it can mean something else. It can mean intelligence. You know what? It's just not a good program. You know, we're accustomed to using the program in connection with computers, or some kind of technology. If it's just like botched every time I use it, you know what? I'm getting another program. Delete. So, it can be from understanding instead of frustration. There is no other shelter by realization. Material exhaustion. There is no shelter.
I don't know if this is a question, but I was just wondering how people are able to go through this process of trying to get into impersonal realization, because we also hear from Bhagavad Gita that a spirit soul cannot be idle even for a moment.
Well, it can have different impetuses. If frustration can be a big one, or wanting to be God can be another big one. Or put the two together and you got impetus. They can be really, Stoics can have different purposes. Vishwamitra Muni and what he underwent for so long, and because it was like, I want to be a Brahmarshi. I want to be like Vishishta. And I don't want anything less than it. So, it can be material ambition. I want to be God. I want to be the best. I want to be at the top. Some people, that's their thing. So there's different motivations, or, strong impetuses for different people can be different.
So that also, it's not really fully free of material conceptions in one sense.
Absolutely. It's not free from desire either. It's another desire.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I had the same thought process, but extension to that, why do, if something is very difficult and something is easy, and people try to take the easy process than the difficult process, But here, I think we see more people taking to impersonalism because of is that because of the people get more frustrated?
Their hearts are hard. They can't see the positive. They can only see, let me get away from the negative. Their hearts are hard. They're in Maya. That's why they can't surrender to Krishna. Forget it. Not even so many people are atheistic. Don't use the God word around here. It's pervasive. Because the God words means I'm answerable to somebody. Forget it. Bhangsi already touched on all of this.
My other question, Maharaj, the difference between the Brahmavadis and Paramatmavadis. From this translation, it looks like even the Brahmavadis also need to meditate on something, right? So,
There may, yes, your mind has to go somewhere, isn't it? So, but their meditation can be different. This is not claiming that there is no other channel to follow to get to the stage of Brahman realization. It's describing the effect of Gyan, and can have an elevating function, but partial. But there may be what the mind of the impersonalist goes to, maybe a little different than what's described here.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. I have one question from this morning's discussion and two not directly related. When we are hearing about these two patients for these impersonalists to be able to reach the Brahman feature, the second one, we have this all attachment to material sense objects should be gone. And in a sense, even in our bhakti process, we also need to reach that stage in order to fully reach the goal. So I'm trying to clarify my understanding. So these impersonalists, they try to do it on their own and they have to come to that stage in order to attain. Whereas for us, we have the mercy of Krishna and our acharyas and the help of bhakti process.
There's more than that. Yes, and there's more than that. The more than that is out there in the universe around me, there's an object. It has a function. The function is to be used in Krishna's service. That's positive. It's energizing. It's vitalizing. They don't have that. It's just negation. Non-attachment to material objects for the devotee it's meant for Krishna service. Built into that is not attachment, material attachment. And the Mayavadis don't have that.
The other question, last evening while you were responding to Rupa Mataji's question about why more than one sampradaya, you just mentioned about this two different groups in Sri Vaishnava Guru Maharaj. This is something which always kind of disturbs my heart about the Ritvik philosophy. I'm just trying
About which philosophy?
Ritvik philosophy.
It's altogether different. It's altogether different.
So I was trying to understand the essences have to be kept, whereas in this particular case, it's not just the diversity itself, it's a deviation from the essence.
Yes. In the Sri Sampradaya, it's there's details, but the essence is you just surrender to Narayan and that's it. And then the other says it's an ongoing process of surrender to Narayan. and everything else is essentially the same. I mean, there's connected to that, there's some differences, but it's more of a Siddhanta point, and this Ritvik thing is just a deviation. Nowhere, anywhere, in anywhere is there this idea. It's total fabrication and very inoffensive on top. Next.
Is that also kind of a fruitless labor because they're also endeavoring so much to follow Prabhupada and his teachings?
Not exactly. That is to say, the persons who they bring this offensive teaching to, they're introduced to Prabhupada's book, they're introduced to chanting, they're introduced to deity worship, they're introduced to prasadam. But they're also down dumping, some poison. And, anyway, and some people, the little light goes on, hey, wait a minute. So.
The other question about this, we were discussing this Namanta Eva, about the topics of the Lord Guru Maharaj. I'm finding it a little difficult for me when I'm trying to hear different devotees speaking Srimad Bhagavatam. I mean, I know it's a immature tendency. So I have some favorable speakers where my heart is more connected, and the other times, even if I'm trying to pay attention and like really hear with focus, somehow it doesn't connect or the way I'm supposed to hear. So I would like to seek some help, how to go beyond who is speaking or how they're sharing to actually the messages of the Lord.
Well, I don't know if you need to. I mean, having a particular appreciation for a particular style, etc., that's the individual nature. I don't know if you need to anesthetize your individual nature and go on the other side of your nature.
So, in those cases, do I just hear only those?
Well, especially in the earlier stages of bhakti, one should hear principally from one source. In addition to Prabhupada, principally from one source. Because you start going to other sources, depending, it's not like you're sitting at a Bhagavatam class in a temple, but there's luminary speakers out there that they say things that's reported to me, this speaker so-and-so, I heard such and such. Is it true? And my response is, what? What to speak of style? Some have an attractive style, but here and there, there's sand in the sweet rice. And so my position is, I don't think it's a good idea for you to hear from so-and-so. Although they have, some charisma, and they have some, lots of knowledge in their knowledge basket, but I don't recommend. So it takes discrimination, but especially in the beginning, it's good to hear. I've explained this at least 10 times. This thing of reading different acharyas. A new person may just get bewildered because this says this and that says that. So what's going on? And it's simpler just read Prabhupada's purports because he pablamizes everything. He presents to the audience that he knows, and their audiences are different audiences. But they're giving essences, so then it takes, it's a little bit of a stretch for newer persons to hear different acharyas that may not say identical things, and how are they going to process that? A newer person, like, spun out. And, in all this refined detail that Prabhupada doesn't give. Now, the chapter 14 is not Prabhupada, it's his followers. But all the other parts of the Bhagavatam, the earlier parts of the Bhagavatam, it's baby pablum. It's really just goes so smooth, and even there are some things, wait a minute, something over here and something over there. But largely, it's very simple. Anyway, I'm doing it with a little caution, but it's 8:25, and we haven't gone to online questions. Let's give the microphone over here. Nothing? Okay.
Sorry, Guru
One more. Okay, she's eager.
Not a question, Guru Maharaj.
What?
This is not a question, Guru Maharaj. I was just asking that last question with reference to our local Srimad Bhagavatam.
Well, okay, the local Srimad Bhagavatam speakers. It's natural you have an attraction more for some than for others. Your question specifically is how do I get the essence instead of tuning out? Listen very carefully to the translation and purport, and see how this individual is explaining the essence of the verse and the purport. Now, different speakers have different ways of doing things. Some just meander; they don't even stay on topic. So, then you may have your preference to speakers, but try to see where the essence, how it's being expanded by different speakers. You're on. Not? Go ahead, speak.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Just one, the millennial generation, they seem to be very impersonal. I have children, my boys are in that generation. And so much so that it seems to be like an understood and acknowledged way, because we are actually building applications and things, computer applications and things to help them. Where earlier we used to pick up the phone and call customer service, talk to people about issues, challenges, technical. But now it's all chat features, things that they can just do on their own and not even connect with, not have to talk to anybody at all. So, that is at a, very basic level, but that thing of impersonal, how to help.
So you're making a comment. You have a question?
How to help.
How to help. Your comment made me think of a nice devotee who, in their first year of college, reported back the prevalent view, and I can't remember their language, but it's undergone some evolution. It used to be agnostic. What's spiritual as agnostic goodness. Being a good person without, you don't have to have God in the picture to be a good person. And the new iteration, this nice devotee was describing, I'll see if I can find it, or ask them again what they said. But it's even more dry. I forget the language. And so I'm just confirming, the millennial generation, it's intense. So your question is what to do about it. How can one be a supporting mother for my millennial kids that are influenced by the generation that they're part of. One of the methods, two of the best methods, one of them is peer association with devotees that get it. Devotee youth that get it. And that how they can associate, especially in this pandemic time, is they have their own ways, and it's not just text messaging each other, it's reading groups. And they read together, and they're enjoying reading together, and they're enjoying each other's association. On Zoom, they can see each other's face, and, it's not as warm as in person, but, it's a current medium. So where are those young people? And there, you ask around, there are these young people. I would say you can start with, for example, you can start with Mukund and Shruti, and they'll know some of them, and there's it's abundant what's out there. Because I've been invited to some of those reading groups, and then I see Mukunda's picture, so he knows at least one of them. But they may have their limits of how many, and approach him and find out. Can we create something for some of our youth here, or whatever? And they'll help you. So, the older generation, it's just standard, generation after generation. The older generation, they messed up. And, we don't want to be guided by people that messed up. We want to, leave us alone. It's just teenage. And so somebody that's closer to their age, peer, or somewhat slightly older association that doesn't have that, they have bhakti. And they like sharing bhakti with others, and when that taste is there, it helps pull one out of that time warp. Okay?
We have almost 6 questions online. First is Rupavilas Prabhu. What is the destination of Paramatma meditator if the meditator has not met the Lord face to face like Dhruva and Narada did? Do they go to Vaikuntha or Brahmajyoti?
I touched on that. There's many possible destinations, and it depends on the variables of their consciousness, their intention. Krishna reciprocates with all of that, their qualification. There can be many different destinations.
And Radha asks, how to control our reacting when one is frustrated? How to get rid of frustration?
Get a punching bag and hit it a few times. And you hurt your hand, you go, wow, why did I get frustrated? At least I hit the punching bag instead of my wife or my husband or my kids. And because they might hit me back. So that's not a good method. Control of the mind and senses, and cultivating the quality of goodness, and performing sadhana bhakti nicely, and learning the principle of kindness and tolerance instead of reacting. That's a whole topic. It's a big, how do you overcome lower modes in pushings? That's the question. It's a big topic.
Snehavalli Mataji was saying, I think in verse 2, Lord Brahma said, knowing Krishna's personal feature is more difficult than the impersonal feature. In Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 12.5, we discussed that knowing impersonal feature is more troublesome.
Oh, she's got those Okay, so
My question is, why Lord Brahma is saying this? Is it out of humility or a different realization?
it's his my understanding of what he's expressing is he, Brahma, has the inability to understand the nature of Swayam Bhagavan Krishna as the Vrajbasis understand Swayam Bhagavan Krishna, because that's the fullness of Swayam Bhagavan Krishna and it's most rare to achieve. Prema stage, there's two characteristics found in Rupa Goswami's teachings, and it's rarely attained. It's rarely attained. So it requires qualification that Krishna gives that to one, the realization of his personal feature. It's rarely attained. Attaining prema is rare, and reciprocation from Krishna is, from those who have attained prema, is similarly rare. That's the meaning of what he's saying. That's my understanding.
And second is more of a comment. Jiva Goswami is comparing impersonal Brahman to heart. Somewhere else.
No, he's comparing the jiva to heart, not the impersonal Brahman. The impersonal Brahman is what is realized by the jiva, or by some jivas. And the place of realization is the heart or the jiva. Not impersonal Brahman is the heart.
I mean, she was adding, somewhere else he compared Brahman to open space, Akash, which is even difficult to have reflection of it on the mirror.
Yes.
It is difficult to comprehend.
Yes, it sure is.
And Chinmayi Desai, Hare Krishna Maharaj, I tend to slip down on motivation that how can a person like me, filled with material desires, qualify myself to devotion to Krishna, a Supreme Personality Godhead, who is distant and uncompromising on materialism?
Uncompromising on?
Materialism.
Well, I beg your pardon. He is very kind. Are you going to read something more? Okay. He's very kind. He's not uncompromising. I mean, here we are. And he's accepting us. And he's not uncompromising. We're not there yet, and he's being very kind. Is a loving father going to say, look, kid, you either, get perfect or get out of the house? That's not a loving father. Krishna's a loving father. He's in our heart. Even we go to the microbial germ or a worm in stool. He's in our heart. He's very kind and loving. He's not uncompromising. So, since the initial part is, I have so many material attachments and infested heart with material attractions and so forth. Krishna is very kind. Get good association. And, that good association, the right kind of good association is going to kick you out. Get out. You're not pure yet. That's not going to happen. So through good association and good sadhana, the unqualified can become qualified. That's what we're hearing. These messages, how many sets of Srimad Bhagavatam are sold every year, and are the persons receiving them, those that have no material attraction? But there's magic in these messages. So get your Bhagavatam set and dive in. Join one of the reading groups and enjoy. Feeling becoming purified and cleansed. Yes, there's the continuation of attachment will be there. It's not overnight magic. But purification is guaranteed because the messages are very special, and do that in the association of devotees. That's our hope.
This question is from Neeraj Bhatnagar Prabhu. If we are solicited by someone close for donations to organizations supporting impersonal doctrine, is it okay to donate?
Well, I wouldn't advise such charity. It's not the right mode of nature. It's not. You find instead, you give a polite no. However, you give polite no's to people that ask for something. The answer is no. You give a polite no. And if you have discretionary funds, you use directly in Krishna service or those who are doing Krishna service. That's where you give. That's the right charity.
I have two more questions. Amara Mataji, what are some pointers to understand one has impersonal mood? I'm asking this because sometimes, due to my upbringing, one may have loving and respectful relationships with people, or to say no isolation or conflicts with anyone. But still, he may not have the taste of bhakti or attraction or urgency to Krishna.
I don't understand her question. Do you understand her question?
So both, one part she's telling one has good upbringing to have loving and respectful relationships, but also asking what are the pointers to understand one has impersonal mood. Yeah, like one has good relationships and upbringing, but don't have enough devotion to bhakti. So if I understand correctly, she was asking what are the pointers to understand the...
The pointers to understand is clear, but the other part is not at all clear. So I'll just respond to the part that's clear. We've been discussing this in the earlier section, so maybe if she could just go back and review the earlier section, because Amara, you can listen to the pointers that Vangsidhari was making in the beginning, seeking clarification. Are these symptoms of one who has impersonal tendency? And the answer was yes. So listen to that rather than reiterating everything. And if you're not clear, speak to Vangsidhari. He'll clear you. He understands it quite well, it looks like. Go ahead.
This is from Malini Radha Mataji, Melody Mataji. From Bhagavad-Gita 4.10 purport, it says, one has to get rid of 3 stages of attachment to the material world: negligence of spiritual life, fear of spiritual personal identity, conception of void arises from frustration.
Correct.
Does the fear arise out of stepping into unknown area which is beyond our senses and experiences?
Well, it could be. It could be. What Prabhupada writes in his purport is not exactly that, but it could be. Huh?
3 more questions.
Oh. No more after this.
3 questions. Megha Mataji from Nepal. She asks, so Krishna says in Gita that out of thousands of millions, a few try to understand God. Out of those few, maybe one truly understands me. So I cannot really understand all of the great qualities, though I know what they are. Does that mean people who are in thousands that are trying to understand God cannot go back home to Him without fully understanding Him?
No.
Would that considered be like that, like what Hiranyakasipu did?
No. You don't have to. Yeah, we don't have the capacity to fully understand the unlimited because we're limited. However, just like as an example, the illiterate Brahmin in Sri Rangam, what did he understand about the unlimited? He understood his loving nature. Back to Godhead.
Taruni Radha Mataji was asking, when someone has this coping mechanism to numb themselves as a means to protect one from pain caused by others, how can they overcome this tendency?
Take shelter of the loving devotees and let go of that tendency. Both. Negative over here, positive over there. Seek the positive primarily, because letting go of the negative sometimes can be very difficult because we're, habituated to it. It looks attractive, although it's miserable, like sense gratification.
So final one, Nama Priya Mataji from Phoenix. What is the difference between impersonalists trying to understand with Chitta and the devotees realizing Krishna within their heart? Is it Krishna's reciprocation that makes it personal realization?
No, it is the reciprocation from Krishna. I'm not going to do any more. That's it. It is reciprocation from Krishna, but Krishna reciprocating with something that's inside the heart of the jiva. So it's both. It's a two-way street. It's not a one-way street. So what's the disposition of the living entity? And there's reciprocation with that disposition. It's both. Prabhupada ki jai.